Hello, I'm Matt. I'm a VCD student at Heron. I've got a lot of interests, but today we're just going to focus on one of them, which would be board games. As long as I can remember, I've always loved games. More recently, however, I've begun thinking about them in terms of design. My question is no longer, how do I win? It had become, how did they make this? I wanted to find out and use what I learned to make a game of my own. That, however, would require a little bit of research. Thankfully, I've played a lot of board games ranging from trading card games to role-playing games and everything in between. I've also been the dungeon master of my D&D group for a little over 2 years now, which has helped me gain some experience with using game mechanics to evoke feelings in my players. For the theory side of things, I decided to stick to some more conventional forms of research. A Theory of Fun for Game Design by Ralph Koster helped me understand more about the reasons behind design choices in board games. Game Maker's Toolkit taught me about how different game mechanics come together to create distinct experiences in games despite their common elements. Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal enlightened me as to why we love to play games and how to ensure that my game would include some of those same elements. Now, with my head full of board game knowledge, I was ready to begin my journey, starting with the How Might We statement. How might I create a game about cooperating with others? My answer to that question is Backdoor, a 3-player cooperative board game centered around a theme of computer hacking. But first, we should talk a little bit about my process. All the research I did told me that a game requires a lot of testing and to get a simple prototype made as soon as possible so that you can see whether or not your game is worth it before you spend all the time making the art. So that's exactly what I did. I used Blake flashcards and Sharpie to get the basic idea down and start testing as soon as possible. So I tested with my close friends, coworkers, family, and even my classmates to gather as much feedback as I could and changed the game as I went along. It was a new experience for me as a designer to have something that felt so dynamic and collaborative and was constantly changing due to the feedback with others. After testing was done, I needed a theme. It couldn't be Sharpie on a white background forever. Inspired by Mr. Robot, I decided that a theme of computer hacking would be a little bit more approachable for people who don't play normal board games. I collaborated with a cybersecurity professional in order to make sure that all the terms I use in my game were as close to reality as I could possibly make them. Here you can see the final designs for all 12 cards. Each deck in the game is made up of a combination of these 12 cards. These are the reference place cards, which are placed in front of players in order to help them remember not only all the things that they can perform in the game, but also it keeps track of their access level and their data mine nodes, something that I'll explain when I give you a demo shortly. Unfortunately, I was unable to create a print prototype due to the current circumstances with coronavirus. However, I found a program called Tabletop Simulator that allowed me to create and use a digital version of the same game. The basic premise of the game is that the players are a group of hackers attempting to breach a system by raising their access level to 4 before meeting at the target space. Alright, so here's the current prototype of my game that I have running in Tabletop Simulator. You can see here that we've got our little player card in front of us, so that'll tell us that we can exploit green nodes, and then it also tells us all the different things that we can do on our turn. So, for example, on this first turn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to infiltrate an adjacent empty node. So we'll take a look here, and you see that from this middle spot here, we have 4 little spokes coming out. And so this card is called a node, each card is, and so then I will infiltrate this node here. So the way that we do that is you draw 2 cards, and then we will place one of those cards down. And so this one here, as you can see, it says password protected. So this is a red node, which means that the orange node. So you can see that the social engineer, which can exploit orange nodes, is able to do that. So that's the end of green's turn. So we'll go ahead and discard this card and end of the turn. And it'll take us over to orange. So on orange's turn, they can move up to our access level. So he's going to go ahead and do that. So we'll move over here. And then the action that we're going to take is to exploit a node that matches their color. So a social engineer is someone who is able to use like phishing scams and things like that in order to get information. And so that's why their nodes are password protected. So in this case, we'll go ahead and mark this one as exploited, move our access level up until 2, And then we will flip over the top two cards and we get to place one of those here. So in this case, I'm going to place this T joint here, and then this other one goes in the discard pile. So then we will go ahead and end the turn, and we'll go over to player 3's turn. So, on this occasion, I am going to use the move action in order to move them over to here, and then draw. So, in this case, we're going to use Data Mine, which lets you look at the top card of your deck and then decide to keep it or not. So, in this case, this is a card for orange, and so I would like orange to be able to use that card. So I'm going to go ahead and place it here, which is right under the data mined node there. So that's sort of a simple way how a basic turn goes. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and show you what it looks like near the end of the game now. Alright, so now that I've played through a couple of turns off screen, we can take a look around here on this board and we can see that a lot of these different areas have been, or a lot of these different nodes have already been exploited by the players raising their access level. And so when the social engineer player was the first to reach access level 4, they were able to place the target card, which is where now that all 3 players have finished their raised their access levels to 4, they need to get back to there before the time runs out. Overall, working on this game was an interesting new challenge for me as a designer that I enjoyed immensely. I hope to continue working on it post-graduation and maybe even someday release an actual physical copy. Thank you for your time.